Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to Head to Head, a Star Wars show. We got a great one for you tonight. What do we got, Daryl? I'm
Well,
going to put you on the spot this time.
yeah, hey, it's cool. So we have Maul versus Kylo.
Oh, that's going to be good.
Yep. We also have Rian Johnson finally admits that there was no plan for Rise of Skywalker. We also have, let's see, Indira Varma. She's actually going to be in the Obi Wan series, which is rumored.
It's a tough one to say.
Yeah, I know. And then we also have Fennec Shand could be in the Bad Batch. And of course, we have Hera replaces Kara.
It's all coming to you right now.
You're listening to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Two fans, two generations, all things Star Wars begins now.
All right, hello, everybody. I am Eric Vansel.
And I'm Daryl Sanders.
And we're your hosts for this show. So, there's just been a lot of Star Wars news in general, if you really think about it. I mean, it's so funny because, it was like we always try to put these outlines together and the shows together and stuff like that a few days before, but it was like almost every single day something new is coming out.
Yeah, man.
And you're just kind of like, man, should we put this in the show? Should we not put this in the show? What should we do? I mean, it gets kind of tough, but I think that the biggest news that we got, at least within the past week or few days or whatever, is the fact that it looks like, since we know that Gina Carano was fired,
Right.
and Cara Dune is not going to be recast, that it looks like we're going to get a Clone Wars favorite character, well, actually a Rebels favorite character, Hera Syndulla. So we're going to get into it right now, guys. Okay, so this is kind of a big thing, although I'm not entirely sure that she's going to be in The Mandalorian. I know that a lot of the stuff has been that she's really going to replace Cara Dune more so in Rangers of the New Republic. I think that that's really going to be more the focus on this whole thing, but I don't know. What are they basically saying about this? I mean...
Yeah, I mean, this is really cool. And of course, we were all wondering, what were they going to do, once they removed Gina Carano from the character, and were they going to replace her, as far as with another actress, or were they just going to do away with her completely? But like we said, they're apparently replacing her with Hera Syndulla. Now, the cool thing is, for those of you who aren't, as aware of who Hera is one of the pilots from the Rebels era, where you have Ezra, Zeb, Kanan, Thrawn, that whole series. So if you guys aren't, abreast on that, I highly suggest you kind of watch that, because she's a very pivotal character on that particular show. However, she does end up having a relationship with former Jedi, I guess if you want to call him, Kanan Jarrus, who ended up becoming blind and ended up sacrificing himself for the sake of the group. But before he became one with the Force, he became one with Hera. You know what I'm saying? So they actually have a son named Jason. Now, it's funny because they spelled it just like they did Jason Solo.
I was wondering about that because I saw that. I remember seeing that, when the whole thing was coming out or whatever. I'm like, did they do that?
Yeah.
Because they're always borrowing from the expanded universe in these like really outrageous ways. Like, they'll actually cherry pick the smallest details of this stuff. Not everything that's cool. Like, for instance, I think that we all know that Jason Solo is pretty much Kylo Ren. They basically base Kylo Ren off of Jason Solo. But I think that what they could have done, and I've said this before, is they could have actually left a lot of the expanded universe trilogy. Oh, how do I want to put this? They could have actually left a lot of this stuff intact without cherry picking it so randomly, because that, to me, that's where they make their biggest mistakes sometimes. In addition to the fact that they're not necessarily doing anything cohesive, it's like they're picking these random little spots. And I just think that it would better serve the overall story arc. And I'm not talking about just where the sequel trilogy was concerned, but I'm also talking about where some of these new series are concerned. Because if you think about it, they actually have to now really be careful what they do with continuity. Because it's not like they just, when they had The Mandalorian, and usually they would have like one series on at a time. They had the Clone Wars, and that went to Rebels, and you had Star Wars Resistance, but that was set far enough in the future that it didn't matter. Then, of course, they went back to Clone Wars for a season, and then, and then, of course, The Mandalorian. But the problem is that if you start having all these different series that are taking place in the same time period, in the same era, you have to be really careful what you start to do with this stuff.
Oh, yeah, I mean, definitely. But I think, once again, you're dealing with Filoni and Favreau. So, some things, you kind of just have to trust that they, have.
Well, in The Mandalorian, yeah. But they're not necessarily the showrunners for all of it, though.
No, but I mean, I think they're kind of.
Do you think they're basically sort of at the top of the pyramid?
Yeah, especially since, I mean, like, we had the most successful show. I mean, come on, guys. It's
right,
like,
they get to make the rules. Yeah, exactly.
But, the cool thing is that, we're starting to see a lot of things coming into play where we're seeing, a lot of animated characters come to life. We already saw Ahsoka, has come to life. Now we're possibly going to see Hera Syndulla come to life. And then there's even another one that may be coming to life. We'll talk about that a little bit later. However, I'm really kind of, excited to kind of see this kind of stuff. But with the Rangers of the New Republic, from what I'm hearing, they're also they're kind of using old or unused Rebels stories for that particular show.
Yeah, I saw that.
That might serve Hera's character a lot better because she comes from that, that meeting.
Right, and maybe that's the reason behind the decision. Because to be honest with you, I was a little surprised that was who they went with.
Yeah, me too.
It makes sense when you really start to digest it and start to think about it. You're kind of like, well, I can kind of, okay, I see that. Like when I read the news, it wasn't like I was completely stunned.
Right.
But at the same time, I think I was
going. Like,
yeah, like I was kind of surprised. I'm like, well, that's kind of an interesting choice. Like, and I wasn't really going, oh, how dare you guys, replace her with this character or whatever, because it would have made sense, I think, to either do that or really within story. I think it would have made more sense to replace her with Sabine.
Yeah, I mean,
because of the Mandalorian connection. But then again, if this is really more so for Rangers of the New Republic, then maybe Hera does make more sense. And I was also reading that they were saying that they were even going to put Hera into Ahsoka.
Yeah, I mean, like, just like, we were saying that how Mandalorian characters were going to go into Ahsoka, and, I think, like I said, we're going to see people coming in and out of each other's shows, honestly, which would be cool. The thing is that Rangers of the New Republic, I can see that considering the fact that, okay, we saw her, we heard her name in Rogue One. And then we saw the ghost once again at the end of Rise of Skywalker, as far as being one of those ships. So we know, like, you can assume, I should say, that she's around. So it makes sense, because she's always kind of had ties to the kind of the Republic or the New Republic, or what turns into the New Republic, I should say. It makes sense that she would, kind of be around, and I could see her being an integral part in this whole thing. But we have some chats, man.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me in the least.
So
usually by now, we start talking and chats are coming in. By the way, I don't know if anybody is watching from this group, but a friend of mine decided to post the fact that we were doing the show tonight to a group called Star Whores. Not my name. I had nothing to do with it, but if you are watching from Star Whores, welcome. And,
hope you enjoyed the show.
Yeah, check out their group if you guys get a chance. It's another Star Wars discussion group, and to me, you can't ever have too many of them. So
definitely.
All right, what do we got?
All right, well, first we have Ronaldo. He says, hey, as always. Hey, Ronaldo.
Hey, Ronaldo.
And then we have a question already from Dark Sage 9117. And the question is,
Dun, dun,
what
dun.
what exactly was her post about the Holocaust that got a lot of heat? I was under the assumption that she compared Disney or Star Wars to the Holocaust, which, if that was the case, is wrong. I know she's posted something about World War II, but maybe I don't think they finished that statement. Maybe I asked this because I know she had tweeted something about Germany and the Second World War that people took offense to. And I'm not exactly sure what it was.
Okay. Well, the first thing I would do, not right now, but definitely check out a show that we did a week or so ago. It's all about her firing.
Yeah.
And what happened and why it happened. So we did like a whole show, and I mean it wasn't insanely long, so it's definitely watchable. I know some of our shows can go on for a while, but definitely check that out. It was called The Firing of Gina Carano, right? I mean, I don't think we came up with any clever title. It was just kind of that's what it was. But in a nutshell, no, what she was doing, and you know, again, we went over this too. It's like Pedro Pascal had made some similar comments that were, you know, his was like a more Democratic view. She's more Republican. And it was kind of like comparing the persecution of the Republicans to the persecution of the Jews during World War II. It wasn't really directly the Holocaust per se, but I mean, that was obviously the results of it, but that's where that came from. And that's why it was funny, because I was just talking to somebody else about this the other day, where you actually had, at first, they were thinking of getting rid of her. Lucasfilm anyway wanted to get rid of her, but it was actually Jon Favreau that stopped it and said, you know what? No, I'm putting my foot down. And he actually protected her there for a second, but
she kept making statements.
Right. And apparently, you know, and it's funny because if you read some stuff, he's like kind of mad right now that they did that. And I'm sure there's all kinds of stuff right now going on behind the scenes of Lucasfilm that's crazy as a result of this firing.
Right.
And that's why, to be honest, I'm really surprised at them announcing a character replacing Cara Dune.
Yeah. I mean, especially because, you know, like we said, she's not a pivotal character, but she's still a important enough character. And like I said, I think Rangers of the New Republic was going to feature her pretty extensively.
That's the problem. The problem is and I remember us making that statement, but I did not take into account the fact that, she was actually supposed to be probably the lead of Rangers of the New Republic, or if not a prominent character, and then she was supposed to have her own spin-off series.
Yeah, I mean, I think she was kind of having her, and maybe they still were planning on bringing in Hera, but now they might be bringing her in more or earlier than anticipated, just because of Gina Carano not playing Cara.
Well, that was going to be a question I was going to have. I mean, do you think that bringing in Hera was something that they had planned all along?
I could see that. I mean, it would make sense, and especially how fans have taken to the live action version of Ahsoka. I think people want to see now these animated characters come to the live screen, which you and I have said this before.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think that would be great and awesome. And like I said, she's not the only one who may be coming to. Like I said, we'll bring that in a little bit later.
How you keep teasing them.
I know. That's what I do. But so the thing is that I really think that with Lucasfilm, once again, you could just see there's problems. And, this is something that John Boyega was kind of speaking about, almost like over a year ago with the whole Black Lives Matter movement, where he felt like he wasn't supported as far as his stance and as far as the Black Lives Matter movement, and how Disney or Lucasfilm didn't really back him in that. And so you're starting to see the actors and things people who aren't afraid to speak their minds. And, there's always that conundrum of, yes, I represent this brand of Star Wars or Lucasfilm or Disney, but yet I'm still my own person. And I still want to be able to voice my opinions on things that I may, feel that's personal. And that shouldn't affect my work. And so you kind of have that, that conundrum.
Yeah,
So,
it really is a fine line. And I
Yeah.
mean, the problem is that you can see both sides of the argument. That's the
Sure.
problem. And I think that where it comes in is that you have to, I think that if you're a celebrity, and this doesn't matter. I mean, I don't agree with the whole cancel culture thing where they're going back to like tweets or statements or whatever from,
6 years ago or
20
something.
years ago even. I remember they went after one comedian for something he said in like 87 or 89 or something. It's like, come on, guys. I mean, this is getting a little bit out of hand.
Right.
But at the same time, the problem is that the way that businesses and brands are operating today, it's a little bit different from the way that it was 10 or 15 years ago. The employees are actually out there being ambassadors, good or bad, for these brands or companies. And that just wasn't the case a long time ago. So when people are coming out and saying, well, I should be able to say this or I should be able to do that, you have to understand that if you have a company, especially if they're a reputable company, something that's really famous or like a Coca-Cola or something or Apple or whatever, it's like, okay, it used to be that the employees of a lot of companies were just nameless, faceless people other than the people who are actually dealing with them. But the problem now is that they're actually almost like brand ambassadors, whether they want to be or not. And this is part of, I think, a bigger discussion about social media. But definitely where it relates to Gina is that even though she should be able to say whatever she wants and have her own thing, it's kind of like something that you brought up. It's like, well, have an account that's more for your personal friends or something that you can basically tell people your personal views, but not necessarily the official blue check-marked Gina Carano account.
Yeah, I mean, even to that point, just recently, rapper T.I., he's in, a bit of a hot water right now just because of some allegations that have been brought towards him. And they've already eliminated his character from the new Ant-Man movie because...
Yeah, it's like...
And he hasn't been proven guilty on anything yet.
Well, and that's it. It doesn't matter anymore.
But yeah, it doesn't matter. But now that's revenue that he's not, getting, and then that's opportunities that he's not getting. And now it kind of shifts storylines now because, he might have had a more integral part in the next Ant-Man movie, but now because of this, you might have to rewrite some stuff or, do some things differently. So, we're seeing a lot of things how your behavior as a celebrity, now a lot of celebrities are kind of like on pins and needles now, or walking on eggshells, just because they're worried about like, okay, well, I can't say this, or I know this is an unpopular opinion, but this is what I feel strongly about. But if I say it, is it going to cost me my job or work? You know what I mean? So
yeah, I mean, it's kind of a slippery slope. I mean, it's really hard to cover. That's why I had no problems going back over, even though I still want you to watch the show that we did on this. But it's not so much that we're replaying that episode tonight, but I don't really think that you could talk too much about this story without somewhat addressing
why she's not even
not there. Because, well, let me ask you this: do you think that they should have recast the character?
No.
I totally agree. I really would have a hard time having another actress come out as Cara Dune.
As Cara Dune, right.
Well, I'd really have a hard time if she was Gina Carano.
Yeah.
Like, you know what? The real one's not cool, so I am the public Gina Carano now. That'll be the next one. Instead of publicist, it's like publicist, but the next level.
Right.
Right, where they go out and they be the version of you that...
Exactly.
You should.
It's your stunt double.
Yeah, exactly. It's your stand-in. This is my political correct stand-in.
Exactly. We also have Ronaldo. Ronaldo also says the thing is they can't just not mention Kara's absence at all. And then
yeah, I know. I go back and forth with that too.
Yeah, I mean you can in a way because this depends on where Mandalorian's travels take him. He may not be
exactly. I was about to say, don't forget that she didn't show up for. I mean, granted, the season's only like, 8 episodes or something? Right. So, I mean, but still, she didn't show up for a few episodes. I mean, it's possible. Because, again, and this is something that Daryl and I had talked about a long time ago, you don't necessarily have to have that character.
Right.
She's not that pivotal. she's loved, yes.
Yes.
She's, I wouldn't say she's not important. She is. She's interesting. The whole Alderanian connection I thought was really cool. I mean, there's definitely a lot of
story there.
Story, exactly, that's there. But at the same time, it's kind of like, okay, if she's gone off on other missions or, you know, however they want to write her off the show, I think they can do that. But I do agree that they don't have to address her absence to what you were alluding to, which is like if he's just off on another adventure, like let's just say they decide to focus on Mandalore. Well, I mean, if he's off and he's dealing with Bo-Katan and, you know, he starts running into all those characters, well then, okay, maybe she's not around. But every single time he needed backup, he would always go to Greef Karga and Cara Dune. And it just wouldn't make a whole lot of sense to me if he didn't continue doing that.
Well, like I said, the only way I can see them getting around it is if he finds new love with his new Mandalorian pals. Then now all of a sudden, now you do have backup, but now, you know, because if you think about it, like she was really the marshal. So she's kind of, you know, her whole role is kind of to marshal that little town of Navarro along with Greef. So in actuality, you know, you can say like, well, those characters need to kind of stay there because there may be, you know, some unrest or something like that. So he might be like, all right, you know, I'll get the Mandalorians to help me. So you can kind of play it off that way.
Yeah, you can. But I mean, I don't know. I just think that being that it's almost like when you have a character like that you can do it and you start to include them on things because they're part of the cast.
Right.
I liken this to when you have a keyboard player in a band. As soon as you have a keyboard player in the band, usually what happens is every song has keyboards in it. Not because it needs it, but because you actually got a full-time guy in the band that just cannot fathom sitting out a song, especially on stage.
Right.
So what ends up happening is you have somebody like a cast member like that. It's all of a sudden, well, we're just going to somehow work it in to where Cara is now almost like his right-hand man. So if they had done it to where she was in and out, and they almost did. They almost had her jumping in and out a little bit, but not enough to me to make her absence not noticeable. I think that her absence is definitely going to be noticeable.
Gotcha. We also have another comment from Johnny Gesundheit.
That must be my friend.
Anyone in the public eye is no longer human and cannot make mistakes. If Dr. Seuss or Peter Pan aren't safe, a free-thinking MMA fighter is screwed. Yeah, got a point.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that's really the bigger problem behind everything is the fact that, you know, you have a situation now where it's kind of like you said, man, actors are starting to really, well, not even just actors, like celebrities in general.
Yeah, just are gun shy. I mean,
they're a little bit gun shy. They're not saying, and at first it seems like it's a harmless thing. It seems like, yes, but now we're stopping all these people from saying these terrible, offensive things or whatever. But it's funny thing happens when you try to do that is that you start drawing the lines in closer and closer. And you know, I mean, I've actually likened it. You can kind of see this a little bit in politics, but it's happening a lot in Hollywood where you have almost the modern day McCarthyism.
Well, yeah, it's funny because, you know, Kevin Hart, the comedian, you know, he had a special where he did it in allegedly like the basement of his house. And, you know, he was making a joke about like, you know, who, you know, I'm afraid of, you know, more than the coronavirus, like you people, like you all. He's like, because you all have made, you know, everyone so afraid to do normal things. Like we're the weirdos now, like we're the weird people. And like, just because we, you know, say what's on our mind or we may do something, it's like all of a sudden it's, oh, we got to cancel this person. We got to get rid of this person. And, you know, it's like, okay, like, you know, Johnny just said, you know, it's like you can't be human anymore. You can't make a mistake because the moment you do, like now everybody wants to, you know, get rid of you. I mean, I understand about letting people know like, hey, this is offensive or this is not cool. You know, we really just wish you would rethink, you know, what you said or something like that and then move on. But a lot of people are just like, no, let's get rid of them. And, you know, I mean, some things warrant that, and I think everybody is just trying to give everybody a life sentence for like a parking ticket, basically. And it's like, this isn't murder, people. You know, it's just like you have to learn how to, you know, have those or right size the offense, I guess.
Right. Well, and this is definitely where it comes into play too, because you have to look at it from the standpoint of where is it going.
Right.
And my biggest fear is that it starts out being innocuous enough. I mean, since we were talking about Nazi Germany not too long ago, when you really study what happens, well, this is actually getting to be kind of a deep show, but when you actually study what happened, it seemed like it was for the good of the people. You know, Hitler came in and he started turning around their economy. He started, you know, and it seemed like, oh, this is a good thing. And it very quickly turned into a bad thing. If you read George Orwell's 1984, which a lot of people, you know, look as, that's what you get, the whole Orwellian society, where it's kind of, you know, you have this whole dystopia and all this other stuff, and it becomes very grim, and the government starts to really control and all this. It starts with, but we're trying to help, and we're trying to do what's good for you. These people have the noble intentions of, we're just trying to make everybody feel inclusive. We're just trying to make it so nobody feels bad. But the problem is that, and you know, you and I have actually experienced this a lot. Sometimes feeling bad is not a bad thing. Not everybody should get a trophy.
Right.
You know, I mean, there's a lot of things that are very well intentioned, but get turned around. And the problem that we're facing, at least in this country today, and I suspect that this is probably a worldwide problem, is that freedom is okay as long as it agrees with the majority of whatever people are saying.
Right.
So as soon as you start saying something that's unpopular or that's deemed offensive by a big group of people, suddenly it's bad. And it's one thing if you chastise somebody, but when you start ostracizing them and you're taking away their employment and you're, you know, it's a witch hunt. It's like you literally have this mob that's going after these people and trying to get all this stuff. And it's kind of like, you do realize if you keep on this path, you could be next.
Yeah.
You could be the victim of your own thing. So,
yeah,
I think that's just, it's just a bad move and it's a scary move. But this topic that we're talking about tonight is kind of a two-part thing, because on one hand, it's like, I really wish in a lot of ways they would just end this by saying, you know what? Some of the fans, enough of the people have spoken, let's just hire her back.
Right.
You know?
Honestly, I mean, like I said, I mean, I think she's a great actress. I think she's, I mean, like, I don't think she did something so egregious, but
yeah,
I mean, honestly,
it. But the problem is that, you know, they can't go back. I mean, people would probably just like, you know.
But, you know, like they say, they brought What's-My-Jig back to, you know, the show.
James Gunn.
James Gunn, yeah.
But, well, and this is kind of the same thing because, you know, that's a money-driven thing too.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, Mandalorian is it's a flagship show of Disney Plus right now.
Well, I think that if enough people actually, you know,
clamor
and whined about it, and you know, you had a hashtag hire Gina Carano,
right, instead of Solo 2.
Well, no, because it was a hashtag fire Gina Carano.
Right, I know.
And that's what kind of got it right. Yeah, make Gina Carano season 3 happen.
Yeah.
I don't know why I'm getting confused. You know what it is? I'm getting confused with Cobra Kai.
We got another one from Ronaldo. He says, in my opinion, I think they should have recast. They have been recast in other franchises like Harry Potter or the MCU, so I think it would have been a better decision.
I can understand that, but, and I'm sure he's probably going to come up with something instantly, but in a lot of those cases, though, it was not necessarily a recast for the better. Now, a lot of people didn't notice, say, the Dumbledore recast, but the original was the better one. You know, I can't really think of a time and I know I'm going to get burned on this, because somebody's going to chat in, oh, yeah, well, what about this? And I'll be like, oh, yeah, that's true. That kind of was better. But most of the time, the recasts aren't, you know, they just don't work. And I mean, I would say, again, the only way that I would go for a recast is if you're in a situation where this character actually had something really important to do. I mean, my whole thing is like, look, you didn't recast Carrie Fisher.
Right.
And Leia was supposed to actually carry the entire, no pun intended, the whole episode 9.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, come on. Why on earth would you recast Cara Dune? Unless, and again, I'm contradicting myself a little bit because earlier I just said, oh yeah, look at all this stuff, right? She's supposed to be in Rangers of the New Republic, featured probably more prominently in the next season of The Mandalorian, and then of course she was supposed to get her own spin-off, and I'm sure she was going to pop up and probably rival Darth Maul in his how many, different shows she could pop up in.
Right.
And that's all gone now. And it's like, okay, so on one hand, you did find her to be an important enough character in order to start placing her prominently in all these different series. On the other hand, if you really look at the totality and the scope of the show, I mean, they killed off Quill, and you can almost argue that he's more important.
Well, I will say this. Hopefully, what will happen is, okay, they fire her now. Okay, we're probably going to have season 3 of The Mandalorian.
Oh, like bring her back for 4?
And they bring her back for Rangers. By that time, hopefully things will have calmed down, blown over, and then they could bring her back for 4, and then, I mean, not for 4, but for Rangers. And then, we can move from there. Ronaldo also says, I think Hera is a good decision. If this really happens, but Adin Versio would have been more interesting, I think.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. Because, people forget about Adin Versio. And a lot of times, even when people remember her, they think of her as when she was still part of Inferno Squad.
Mm-hmm.
But, spoiler alert for Battlefront 2. Hey, you got to do that, right? Or we're going to be canceled. So, pretty much what happens is she eventually turns good,
right.
I guess, and joins the rebellion. But I'm not entirely sure of the timeline because, the game's a little convoluted. I mean, when you're playing the campaign, you got Kylo Ren in there. So it kind of makes me wonder. It's like, okay, well, Adin Versio is supposed to be watching as the second Death Star blows up. And now she feels disillusioned because it's like, well, crap, what are we going to do? Palpatine's gone. But at the same time, you have her then interacting with characters that came quite a bit later. So I think that it would be, you could probably do it because this is taking place like 6, maybe like 7. And I'm not even really sure from season to season where the Mandalorian's falling, like how much time is progressing between, say, season 1 and 2 and 2 and 3 and so on. Mm-hmm. But Adin is definitely a character that would be on the table. You could even maybe put her as, well,
I can see her part of, and I mean, you could bring her into the whole Rangers of the New Republic, especially because that's supposed to be, I think, one of the more women-centric. I think that's supposed to be the women-centric show, if I'm not mistaken.
Was it that or was it the Acolyte?
No, well, the Acolyte was, that's going to have a female lead, but I think Rangers of the New Republic is going to have like kind of a strong female force, if I'm not mistaken. Ronaldo also says, what about War Machine in the MCU? Honestly, I disagree. Like, I think Terrence Howard would have done a better job than Don Cheadle.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
100,000%. I was so just torn.
Yeah, I think that Terrence Howard's dynamic, his acting along against Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah, they just had such good chemistry.
Yeah,
and because it was Don Cheadle that took over, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and I mean he was
cool.
He was good, but again, and I don't mean to imply that all these recasts, they're terrible or something like that. Mm-hmm. I just mean that generally speaking, when they recast a role, and I realize that there is an element of psychology involved. Once you get invested with somebody in a role,
right,
it's weird to see
somebody else.
Yeah, somebody else in the role, but at the same time, in a lot of cases, I would make the argument that most of the time the recast actor is always better than the one who ends up in the role. Like the original, usually is the better choice.
Right.
Now, that's not always the case, but most of the time, for anything that I can remember.
Right.
You know.
Exactly. We have Miss Janine Ballantyne. So did this really happen? Hired or fired? Yeah, they actually fired Gina Carano.
Yeah, and it's interesting that, this question is being asked because I had the same question, man. There were so many rumors going around. It was just like so often where it'd just be like, every time you turned around, it's like, oh, Lucasfilm is secretly, or not so secretly,
right,
unhappy with her. It's kind of like, oh, yeah, they're going to fire, and then nothing happens.
Right.
And then the first warning shot to me was basically when they started talking about how Favreau had to step in.
Yeah, when Favreau stepped in, I was just like, okay.
That was kind of like, oh, this is kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't just some sort of rumor or something like that. Like, there's truth to this. And usually that is the case. Where there's smoke, there's fire. I mean, let's face it.
Right.
If enough rumors, they're persistent enough, you start to go, you know what, there might actually be something to this. But yeah, unfortunately, and even when they made the announcement, I was like, nah, this is like another one of those,
like a troll, or like not a troll, but like one of those fake news type
yeah,
things.
Exactly. Like one of those, because the problem with a lot of news today, and this is bad because it's actually affecting real news. Like, I'll give you an example. I don't remember the exact circumstance, but I remember that somebody said something like on a Reddit thread or, some forum or something like that. A DJ, this is a piece of music news, a DJ on a legitimate radio station thought it was a real thing, reported it, then that snowballed the radio stations across the country.
Wow.
So now you have all these real, legitimate, major market radio stations basically putting out this news that was completely fake. Then whatever band or whoever was involved with it had to actually say, no, this isn't true. This is just a wild, crazy rumor. And it was crazy. But, I mean, that's the kind of thing that happens all the time.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, I can understand Janine's point, just like, is this really real? And unfortunately, it is. So.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, yeah. I wish it weren't.
Ronaldo said, I just hope they don't say she's doing submissions. I hate when they say things like that because we know the character is not coming back.
Well, I will say this, though. I agree with the overall sentiment that it's kind of a cheap and cheesy way of, it's like, oh, yeah, they're out on missions or whatever. But what I do like about it is the fact that it gives them room to come back.
Well, yeah, to me, I would just rather them just not say anything. Just don't show her. Because, I mean, like, she doesn't have to be out doing missions. Din, because remember, the show is The Mandalorian. So as long as Din is out doing missions, that doesn't require.
Well, that's the key, though. You have to have it to where, because again, normally I would have agreed with this point all along, but my problem is that they kept bringing it almost. I mean, it was so close to being shoehorned in. Where it's like, really, he just happens to go, and his buddy Grief and Kara are there. It's like, okay, I get it. Main cast, they got to bring them together. But the downside is if you do that, you then have to explain because the absence becomes really conspicuous.
Well, I mean, I understand why this will be a little bit more difficult because all things considered, when we last, left them, it's like, okay, they're all kind of stuck on this ship. And of course, Luke comes in, wipes out everybody, saves the day. Spoiler alert. And then it's like, okay, well, now that you have that resolution, Grogu's gone. That's kind of been the pair. I mean, we always had Grogu and Din. So even if you didn't think about, Grief and Cara Dune, because you were so focused on Din and Grogu being together, it's like this little tandem thing. But then now that Grogu's gone with Luke, well, now he's back to being solo again, which we haven't seen him since the earlier stages of episode 1 of The Mandalorian. So now, who do you put him with? So now you have this whole situation though with, and this is where I can see where it can get kind of convoluted. It's because now you have Din Djarin, he's got to go and deal with Bo-Katan and this whole Darksaber thing. But the other big thing was that you got, you know, you got my boy, you know, Giancarlo Esposito in custody by Cara Dune. So it's like, okay, well, what do you do with that situation now?
Well, let me ask you this, because this is another alternative, and if they want to be gutsy, this would be the antidote, I think, to what Ronaldo was talking about. And that is, if you are firing this person and you're kind of like, you will never work at Lucasfilm again, blah, 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 and oh, by the way, we're not going to recast the role, then just kill her off. There's almost, unless you want to tell stories in, you know, comics and novels and stuff like that, which I get. And I always hated when they would kill off a character because an actor didn't want to play him. And it's like, well, just because they don't live on in a movie or a TV show doesn't mean there's not other medium in which you can,
right,
you know, continue their story. But so the question I'll just pose right back to you is, why not then, if given what you're saying, just kill her off? And by the way, you do make a really good point about Giancarlo Esposito, because it's kind of like, yeah, you have Moff Gideon, who's in her custody. I mean, that
was a big thing.
Yeah, that was, not only was that a big thing, but it was a thing to where they didn't really, for a company that really wanted to fire an actor that badly, they certainly didn't do that in the show. You know, you think that as long as this was going on, and these tweets were going on even back during the filming of season 2.
Right.
You know, it wasn't like they wrapped up season 2 and then she started going, you know, psycho on all these tweets. She's been doing this all along.
Right.
And they've been getting more and more, you know,
I guess more and more.
What's the word? I always do this. Whenever I'm live, it's like my mental thesaurus just goes right out the window. Well, more brazen. I guess it's a good word to use. And it's one of those things that you would think that given you have this actress who's becoming a little bit hard to control, why would you keep writing her into these important storylines? You know, it's kind of like, if you think that there's any chance, and if you're really trying to fire the person, and it's really the director and showrunner that's stopping that, the writing's on the wall. She's not going to last forever. So why on earth? And again, I guess the answer to that would be because it's Favreau and Filoni writing this stuff, and they don't want to get rid of her.
Right.
So you just watch me ask and answer my own question.
Love when you do that.
Isn't it nice?
Ronaldo says, maybe it's not a popular opinion, but I hope that if they do not show Cara anymore, I hope that they say that she died on some mission to make it clear that the character won't come back. He also says, I think it's a good decision to replace her with a love character, so as not to make the situation worse. So I'm assuming he's talking about Hera.
Yeah, like a beloved character. Yeah, well, and I agree. And that's pretty much one of the things that I wanted to address, too, is that if not Hera, I mean, we had Adin Versio as a possibility, and of course I threw out Sabine, but the question is Hera really the best choice? Because again, they really, if you read the article, and you guys could look this stuff up online, but if you read the articles that talk about these stories, and it's been written about a lot over the last 2 or 3 days, you really don't see an emphasis placed on the Mandalorian, which I find really interesting. I mean, I placed an emphasis on the Mandalorian in our title down there because to me, that's where I wanted the discussion to go, because they're screaming, oh yeah, we're putting Hera in for Rangers of the New Republic, and they alluded to Ahsoka, although they didn't really outright say that. But it's like, okay, guys, The Mandalorian is really kind of her flagship show.
Right.
So this could actually be almost an argument like what you were saying, where it's like, well, maybe they're kind of writing her out of The Mandalorian. They were actually going to move her to that, but I don't see that happening.
You can make that assumption only because of how the last season ended. Remember, we're all saying how Cara, had Moff Gideon in custody. So,
oh, maybe that storyline would have been picked up in Rangers.
Exactly.
See, now
because
this
they
is a
had to
good
bring them before the New Republic.
right.
to face
Actually,
the
you know what?
crimes
Wow, dude, I'm having an epiphany right on live television. Sounded bad. The thing that's funny is that I didn't think about that. That what you could do is, because we were wondering, well, what are you going to do about Moff Gideon? What are you going to do about all this? So you had Ahsoka come in questioning him like, okay, where's Thrawn? Where's all this stuff? It may never have been intended for the Mandalorian. Like, the Mandalorian is where all this stuff starts.
Right.
But maybe the Moff Gideon storyline then picks up in Rangers of the New Republic.
Well, yeah, much like, we said that, what we kind of surmised was that Mandalorian was going to be the hub for all these that kind of sprang out.
Yeah, but I think that one of
the
problems I had was I didn't think that it was going to be a situation where, and this is actually brilliant, by the way, where I didn't think that, I thought that the storylines that were started in The Mandalorian would kind of remain there and maybe finish up there, and they would just spawn off these characters. But it looks like they might be doing, and this would be a brilliant use of continuity in Star Wars, is to actually begin a story arc. Now, they do crossover episodes all the time. I remember, you used to see like
DC
something
does it, like DC does that, like with Flash or Supergirl, where they'll have stories that take place on one show and then it's picked up.
Right, which is more common. But I was thinking in terms of like, Law and Order Special Victims Unit, and then it's, picked up on another show. You have like part 1 is there, and then part 2 picks up on another show.
Right. Or
and it'll have some characters.
That Chicago PD
Yep.
and, Chicago MD or something like that,
Yeah, Chicago Fire.
Fire, that's it, yeah.
Well, I think they have an MD too.
But yeah, I mean, that makes sense. I mean, and if they did it that way, I mean, that kind of...
Oh, that would be so awesome.
Yeah, it would be perfect. And you can also see why Hera would be involved in that too.
Yeah, she would actually make a lot of sense for that, given her role. And it was like you said, they brought her up in in Rogue One.
Right.
And
we saw the Ghost.
We saw the Ghost, and that's kind of her ship.
Yeah, that's her thing. And then now with her, and it's funny because her character she has, I don't know if she's actually pregnant or she's already had Jason, but the thing is, Jason, of course, is Force sensitive.
Yep.
So now I can understand why she would have a role, because Gideon is trying to, get, was trying to get blood from Grogu. So you're trying to figure out, so I can understand why Hera will have great concern about that, because she has a son who's Force sensitive.
Well, what I'm trying to figure out, though, is what do you think, like, when is all this stuff supposed to print? Like, I don't remember the timeline for Rangers. I'm not sure if because see, with some of this stuff, they gave a timeline for it.
Yeah.
When they did that big announcement. And it's weird because, like, some of the shows, Rangers of the New Republic, I have a feeling that those kind of shows are going to be a little bit sooner, because there's a lot of shows that they announced out of the blue, like, say, Lando, that we didn't even expect. Like, whoa. But even the Acolyte.
Yeah.
They haven't really been... I think they might have had another story, but like Lando, you don't hear anything about that show.
No, I think that's going to be a while, though.
And I think so, too. But we know that Andor's coming up.
Right. Andor's coming up. Bad Batch, of course, is right around the corner.
Yeah, they moved that to April, right? Like next month. That was supposed to be February. That kind of bummed me out. I'll talk more about that on our Bad Batch story.
It's a bad feeling about the Bad Batch.
Bad feeling about it. I hope it's not a Bad Batch of episodes.
Oh my God.
I know. I'm here all night. Actually, that's partially true, because these are usually long shows.
Right. But I don't know. Like I said, I don't know what the timeline is exactly for Rangers. I don't think they really kind of gave a specific, no pun intended, range of when that was going to come out. But
A range of dates.
Right. But we just got to kind of keep posted on it, and I'm sure there'll be more news as that things develop.
I would hope so. I mean, I guess it's just all going to come down to basically how are they going to present these shows in relation to The Mandalorian. So in other words, are we going to get Rangers of the New Republic after the end of season 3 of The Mandalorian? Is it going to come during? I mean, there's just so many unanswered questions.
Yeah, Ronaldo says, if they remove the character in the same respectful way that they did Spock in Star Trek Beyond, I think there would be no problem.
Yeah, and it's a big if. But again, I do tend to trust the people that are running the television shows more than more than I trust the people that were running the films. So,
definitely.
Which is also part of a later story.
Yep.
Something that's almost like I've been saying it since, but I'll save it till till that point. But
you knew then.
But I mean, I'll just say that I do think that even though it's an interesting choice, I think that Hera replacing Kara,
I know.
it's like it's messing with my head. I think that's a good move, not just for the Rangers of the New Republic, not just for possibly Ahsoka, but I think even her popping up in The Mandalorian is not something that should totally surprise us. But more importantly, what do you guys think?
Exactly.
Do you guys, wherever you are on the whole Gina Carano being fired thing, the fact is she's been fired. They're either going to have to recast her or they're going to have to replace her character with somebody, or maybe not. They could just let it go. You guys let us know in the comment section. And of course, we're going to be here for a while, so you can still chat your thoughts in live right here on Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast.
All right.
All right. So what do we got next?
Next, we have Duel of the Fates. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this week we have Sith Lords. So, who would win between Kylo Ren and Darth Maul? Let's go.
Kylo Ren versus Darth Maul. This is a tough one, man. This one, I have to say, this is not an easy... And you know how I am. I try not to put too much thought into these things until the moment we're live.
Right.
I may be regretting that decision today. Because I'm going to have to... Oh, man. You know what? You go first on this one.
I'm going Maul.
You going Maul? Why are you going Maul?
I'm going Darth Maul because, one, he's trained by Palpatine. Two, I believe that he's more of a skilled fighter. Kylo doesn't seem as skilled with his lightsaber. I see him more being powerful in the Force naturally because, he's a Skywalker essentially. So, of course, he's going to have that, to his advantage. However, I think because of his unstableness, him not being so controlled, I think that's his undoing. Whereas Maul, as we've learned, as he post Phantom Menace, he became more calculating. He became more cerebral, and he's definitely clever. And so I think he would use his cunningness to, once again, best his opponent, just like he did Qui-Gon.
All right, so I was thinking along those lines at first.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking along the lines of, well, Maul does have a little bit more control. He's definitely better with a lightsaber.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that you also have to make the distinction between Ben Solo or Kylo Ren. And you also have to, I'm not going to do this to you tonight, don't worry. I can already see the look on your face.
I feel it.
It's like, oh, here we go. We're going to add 1,000 parameters. Look, the choices are Kylo Ren or Darth, but basically, you did choose two characters that kind of have 2 points in their lives. You had the Ben Solo and Kylo Ren, and they're very different people and very different fighters.
True.
You see this more when you actually read the comics, by the way. Because a lot of people might be like, the heck are you talking about? Like, but, what, you mean the 5 minutes we saw him fight in the Rise of Skywalker? But no, I'm talking more of the comics. But then on the Maul side, you have Darth Maul, and then you have Maul.
Mm-hmm.
Because remember, he basically said, you know what, I'm not a Sith anymore, I'm done with that. And he uses the Force, but it's a little bit different. It's not as Sith-like. So, but again, I'm gonna play cool here. I'm going to make a choice. I'm still going to go, I think, with Kylo Ren. Only because, yes, it's actually going to be a battle today. Only because, in spite of all the points that you made, he's not just powerful in the Force, he's immensely powerful in the Force.
Oh, yeah.
I would say that his power would just vastly eclipse that of Maul. And even though he's not quite as skilled with the lightsaber, he's skilled enough that I think that his power in the Force combined with his lightsaber skills that are still considerable, I think that ultimately he would beat Darth Maul. But I will add this in there.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would be a really close battle. Now, of course, if Jason ends up commenting in either live or in the comments, he'll give us like percentages and
point by point.
Yeah, like point by point. Well, if this, then that. That's part of the reason too, by the way, why I threw that little thing out there, because it's important to take these in. I think a lot of times when you're doing these whole versus battle things or whatever, you know, it's kind of like people tend to cheese out on it and they don't take things into consideration.
Right.
But I don't know.
I'm going to also add
Oh, here we go.
to this point.
Like an amendment.
Yes. 1A. But no,
Here we go.
I think that also with Maul, he's fought way more powerful people. So when you look at, you know, he's gone up against Obi Wan Kenobi. He's gone up against even Savage. He's gone up against Palpatine even. He's gone up against people who have great. He's gone up against Anakin, you know. So I think that
But Kylo went up against Rey. She's all the Jedi, man. Come on.
Yeah, it took all the Jedi, exactly.
No, I mean,
so
I thought of that. I was actually, because like I said, I was really, I think that it almost depends on the day, man. I mean, if you asked me this question, you know, a couple of days from now, I might even say Maul, because I did factor that in. There was Ahsoka, that big Ahsoka battle.
Mm-hmm.
But again, with the exception of Obi Wan and Anakin, I don't know if it would be really interesting to me. You know what we should do one of these days is pit Kylo Ren against Ahsoka.
Oh wow,
that would be
interesting.
That would be a really interesting conversation, which we will not have tonight. We will save that for another show. But but that's what I'm thinking in terms of who did Maul actually fight. And
well, let's see. He beat Qui-Gon. He went up against Obi-Wan.
And he kind of had Obi-Wan. I mean, you know, Obi-Wan kind of cheated. I mean, well, not cheated. I mean, he was fighting for his life, basically. But that was kind of a, you know.
What, the whole cutting in half thing?
Yeah, he kind of jumped out of the...
Oh, out of the little hole?
Out of the little hole thing, and then got behind him and cut him in half. I mean, that was... that wasn't so much of a skill. That was more he surprised him and...
Well, I mean, but Maul kind of did the same thing to Qui-Gon, so karma.
Like instant.
Yeah.
It's a good point.
Let's see. Ronaldo says, Maul. I think Kylo has a lot more potential than Maul, but Kylo never finished his training. Valid point.
Yeah, true, but I'm not entirely sure that that's kind of like a Luke never finished his training kind of thing, because there's a lot of training that Snoke did. Now, I know that at the end of 7, they say, well, okay, come back and I'm going to train you some more.
But here's the other thing, too, though. Like, you know, just think, it just hit me. Ouch. I know, but
man, neither one of us are even parents, and we're telling these like horrible dad jokes.
I know, right? That's why I don't have kids. I don't have to subject them to this. But anyway, no, I think if you really look at it, you see, Kylo never became a Sith Lord. The difference is Maul has been a Sith Lord. And so because he earned that rank and title, like, once again, you kind of almost have to, in some ways, give a little bit of an edge. I would say you give an edge to Maul in that regard, simply because of this. I see you shaking your head at me. Don't you do that.
Man.
So, because, look, he has more.
Maul I'm going to let you finish.
Thank you.
I'm going to pull a Kanye on you.
Maul has more experience, and I think that's what ultimately what Trump Kylo is, that he has more experience than Kylo.
Okay, but let me just hop on this Sith thing for a second, because this is something that always irritates me when people bring this up. They always whine about, well, Kylo wasn't an official Sith Lord.
No.
Newsflash. There was nobody to make him one. Okay? No Sith Lord. Everybody's like Snoke. Snoke was not a Sith Lord.
Palpatine could have made one.
If Palpatine wanted to reveal his presence.
He did. It's Exegol.
that point. And he kind of did make him a Sith Lord in a way, in a roundabout way. Now, granted, he didn't say, your name is Darth, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But, he kind of gave him, here, I'll give you the whole final order. I'll give you the Sith fleet. I'll make you the guy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and he wasn't really, I think he was beyond, by the time Palpatine gets to the Rise of Skywalker, I think he's beyond the whole, I'm going to have an apprentice and another Sith Lord kind of guy. I think he's going, you know what? I'm the man now. I don't need an apprentice. I'm not making anybody a Sith Lord. Because his original plan actually was to pass on his
spirit.
Yeah, or whatever, into Rey so he can live on through her.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a little bit of a different dynamic. And that is something that people understandably criticize, because it's like, okay, you're doing this whole thing and now you're introducing this other concept that's kind of weird. But
Right.
if you just are looking at the Sith Lord aspect of it, it kind of makes sense, because a long enough time had passed. He really needed these apprentice type figures in order to do what he needed to do out in the open so he could operate in the shadows.
Right.
That's why he always had, basically, because he needed somebody to do the whole enforcing, killing,
Mm-hmm.
Assassinating, that kind of thing out in the open, or be like that guy while he operated in the shadows. So
Right.
he no longer had, that was not a thing anymore. By the time he came back, now he's announcing, yeah, I'm Palpatine. I'm back from the dead. I'm basically going to take the entire galaxy back. And there's no pretense this time.
Right.
You guys are all like, at the other time, he's all like still the Emperor, and I'm trying to turn Luke and I'm, using subterfuge in order to undermine the rebels on Endor. Yeah, no. He's just holding up his hands and shooting like Sith lightning at the entire rebel fleet at this point, or resistance fleet.
Mm-hmm.
So pretense is gone. There's no more Sith Lords. So he was kind of a Sith Lord without the name.
Okay.
On the other hand, though, even though I do somewhat get a little bit gaslighted by that argument, it's not like I blame people for bringing it up, because it's something that we've always seen, that we've always knew, and more importantly, there are other dark side users
Right.
that are not necessarily Sith.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually thought that it was a good move that they didn't make him a Sith Lord, actually. Simply because it would have been too much like Vader at that point if they had given him a Darth name. But what I have to figure out, I guess I have to read more comics or something, because what's really weird about it is, he takes on the whole Ren thing, the whole Knights of Ren name,
Right.
and he conquers that leader and then kind of takes him over, which is like a new Sith Lord thing. I don't get that.
Well, I'm just wanting to know where the name Kylo came from.
Right. Like, we get Ren.
Yeah, I get the Ren part, but where'd the Kylo part?
Yeah, where'd Kylo come
Her
from?
name was Ben, so like, why was it? I guess Ben Ren would have sounded stupid. So
Ben Ren.
But
Obi Wan Ren.
right,
It's like, what? Taking the name back.
exactly.
Yeah, that's a good point, man. And the thing is, that Rise of Kylo Ren, I'd have to go back and check it out again, but I don't think they ever addressed where the Kylo part came from.
But to your point though about the whole, Palpatine didn't need. I mean, he had Snoke. I mean, he's kind of like that, basically.
Yeah, all right. I'll grant you the fact that Snoke is sort of like a surrogate.
Yeah, stand in for him. because he was still obviously he's the one who created him. So it's just like, so we know he was around. So he kind of put Snoke out there just to kind of, while he was in the shadows, getting the whole fleet together so he could finally take over. But once Snoke was like, okay, you know, vanquished, it was just like, okay, well, cool. I'll just, like you said, then I'll just take over and, you know, do my thing.
Yeah, but the problem and there's a lot of truth, but I think it was done differently, though. Because he was a little bit of a surrogate in a sense. Like, he was almost a middleman because he wasn't... Well, I guess you can say that he was training him and he was doing all the stuff that Palpatine would probably do in his absence.
Yeah, because that was the whole thing. He was training. He was like, I was hoping that you... He kept telling him, Kylo, like, I was hoping you would be more like your grandfather. And he was trying... Because Palpatine knew about Kylo. He knew he was out there. He knew, you know, the lineage he came from.
Well, and I still say... And I might come back to this later in the show, but I still say that what they should do, honestly, is still give us a little bit more detail on Snoke. We basically know the origin of Snoke, but
how did you get to that point?
Yeah, man, because, okay, we see him floating around in an aquarium or something, and then he's just, like, all-powerful. Because, I mean, he's pretty powerful in the Force. It's like, I mean, you really equip this guy when you...
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Because, you know, you're kind of... And that's one of the reasons why I sort of wish he had been either... I mean, it would have been cheesy if he was Mace Windu.
Yeah.
And just kind of redid his identity. But if it was something like that, though, like maybe he was a fallen Jedi or maybe he was something else and he just became immensely powerful on the dark side, I think they could have run with that.
Let's see. Let's go to the chat. Mother Vansa says, I think she meant to say Kylo, but Kylo is the best.
Kyle.
That's his
yeah, it's kind of like his
undercover boss.
Yeah, his undercover boss. I'd be Matt, the radar technician. When are they gonna make him canon?
I know, right? And then Ronaldo also says, speaking about Palpatine, I look for a video called Palpatine's Journey. It's hilarious. All right, we'll have to check that out.
Palpatine's Journey. I wonder if that's the robot chicken one. Not the one we always. But you remember the one where he's like floating down the shaft?
Oh,
and
yeah.
he starts thinking, you know, I wonder if I had done things differently. And then the Who starts playing and stuff.
Right.
That might be it.
Possibly. But I'm still going to go with Maul. I'm still going to... all that to say, I'm going...
Yeah, you know, you make a couple of good points, but yeah, I'm still going with Maul.
Yeah, I'm still going with Maul. I think Maul is honestly the better fighter. I think he has more experience going up against people, even people who are more powerful than him.
In celebration of cancel culture, I'm just gonna re-edit the show where it's like, yeah, I'm still gonna go with Kylo. It's like I put the voiceover in, or I find like a part in the show where you actually say Kylo's name.
So, I'm assuming you're still sticking with Mr. Ren.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm not trying to be wishy-washy about this thing. I mean, I'm not 100%. It's not like I'm like, yeah, man. I mean, yes, right now at this moment, I definitely feel Kylo would edge him out. But again, I don't feel it would be by that much. So,
whoa, okay. Ronaldo just sent in. There's a character in Star Wars droids called Kylo Ren Cha, also known as Kylo Ren. Maybe that's
like some sort of anime thing.
Yeah, I was like. Sound like an incantation, honestly. But maybe that's inspiration for the name. It's a funny fact. It's so hey, maybe.
Kylo Renja. Yeah. I do remember that. That was, in fact, you should too, because we made the comment about it.
Did we?
Yes. Like toward the end of when we were working at the district, I actually showed you those Star Wars droids episode, that like early 80s thing that basically focused on 3PO and R2-D2.
Right.
And they had a character that was Kylo Rencha. And we're like, really? Is it that? I mean, they had to have gotten the name Kylo Ren from this.
Probably, yeah.
You're like, whatever, man. Still going with Maul, though.
Yep. That's right.
I mean, but Kylo Rencha versus...
Right. Oh, but Kylo Rencha. Oh, it's different.
Yeah, exactly. Then it's a different story. But you know what? I think it's time for us to go to the cantina and talk about some Star Wars news, general stuff. What do you think?
Let's go, man.
All right, let's do it. All right, so the first thing, what I thought was really cool is that they're already, once again, starting to tie in a lot of canon stuff together. So we get Fennec Shand.
Yeah.
In the Bad Batch.
Yep.
Now, that was a character who I don't think she was in the Clone Wars. I think they actually introduced her in The Mandalorian, right?
Right. She's the female assassin that Din Djarin...
Right. That basically Boba Fett came, and that's the reason why, and then she sort of joined him on his journey, and now she's going to be in the Book of Boba Fett.
Mm-hmm.
But what I find really super exciting about this is that it looks like they have released some animation, as you guys could see in our little graphic below, of, hey, this is what she's going to look like in the Bad Batch. So in case you guys have, I don't know how much people know about the Bad Batch. So the Bad Batch basically started out, they had a Clone Wars episode about it, like very early on. I think it was different guys, though.
It was the first actual... some of the actual, like, the arc that they had?
Not the season 7 one.
Okay.
I'm talking about way back.
Okay.
Like in season 3 or 4. They actually had an episode called The Bad Batch.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was different characters. There might have been 1 or 2 guys that were the same. But it was something like that. And basically what it came down to was they more or less had their own way of doing things, and they were kind of like a commando unit that they would call in because they didn't quite follow all the rules. And then in season 7 of the Clone Wars is really where we get the whole story arc with them and everything else. And now they're going to spin them off. And what's interesting about this is that they're going to be talking about these guys. What are they doing pretty much during the time leading up to the original trilogy?
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like in between 3 and 4, and
Yep.
The Empire's there now. They become stormtroopers. The clone troopers are no more. It's like, how do these guys fit into, the universe that's there now? And to me, it's another thing, and this is kind of a thing that's been happening in Star Wars lately, where they're giving me things that I didn't really necessarily ask for or care about. But then when you start to see the stories, you're going, hey, you know what? That might actually be kind of cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think with the Bad Batch, they are, once again, kind of filling in that bridge between 3 and 4, because you got Rogue One, you got Rebels, you got, all these different things. So I think you're kind of still seeing, as we're getting closer to episode 4, you're really kind of starting to see where the galaxy is at this point. And I think that's kind of cool, because you're still feeling in it's almost like a kind of a weird progression of like, okay, we went and started here, and then, a little bit further here. And then by the time you get to Rogue One, like, now you kind of have that whole complete story of like what happened.
Yeah. And it's being told through the eyes of those guys is an interesting perspective, because it's like you said, if they're going to give us stories between episodes 3 and 4, great. But we're kind of getting a picture of what happened. So now the only way to really make it truly interesting is you give us a different perspective on it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the perspective to these guys, because they're clones,
right,
who no longer have an official capacity anymore.
Yeah.
And what that must be like.
Not only that, but it's always interesting to see how things are looking from the eyes of like these troopers. Like, okay, the events, how they're viewing certain things. We kind of got that in Clone Wars a little bit at times.
Yeah, you mean when it overlapped episode 3?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then
I thought that was cool. Like,
yeah.
Especially when they were doing the whole thing with was it Rex or Cody that popped off the chip?
Rex.
Yeah. Because at first he was following Order 66, and then there was that whole thing. And I mean, I just thought that was amazing how you got Order 66 from the viewpoint of the clones, and not just him, but I mean the clones that were carrying it out.
Right.
About how they were now convinced that the Jedi were complete traitors and, they needed to do this thing. And, of course, it didn't occur to them that, hey, you just, like, this occurred to you, like, 30 seconds ago, and now you feel very strongly about it. But, that's one of those things that I think is really cool is that, yeah, you do experience this through their eyes. And I think that the clone's perspective is, like, just like this really cool thing, because we don't really get that. It would almost be like getting events from the original trilogy through a stormtrooper's perspective.
Yeah, I mean, and Fennec Shand, her character is quite interesting. Once again, it was played by Ming-Na Wen.
Who I love. I mean, I remember when she was Chun-Li in Street Fighter?
Yes.
Oh.
Man.
Yeah, I know.
Times.
Yeah, it was.
But the thing is that so she plays the character on The Mandalorian. She's this masterful assassin, kind of I don't say world renowned, but galaxy renowned assassin, very hard to kill. And then she eventually teams up with Boba Fett. And so now to see that she still picks up after Book of Boba Fett. So we know at least in Book of Boba Fett she survives, because now she's in the Bad Batch, which is closer to episode 4. And she's actually still, Ming-Na Wen is actually doing the voice too. So that's cool. So she's actually still playing her character. And if you go on StarWars.com and look up the article, she really kind of goes in depth about the character, how she decided to play her. And, the name Fennec Shand kind of reminded her of the Fennec Fox. And so she tries to move and carry herself almost like in a fox-like manner. She tries to have that kind of sly thing, and she goes into how she developed the character's voice and just all this great information, on Fennec Shand. So it's really cool. I'm glad to see once again that you're going from animation to live action, or in this case, live action to animation. But I think it's really cool, and I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, that's actually one of the more exciting things to me. I mean, I'm not sure. It's funny when these actors get like really into the backstories of stuff, because you almost wonder sometimes if, the producers are like, okay, look, you're a bounty hunter. None of this fox. I don't even know what that is. Let's not get carried away. You're just a bounty hunter. But you're good. Don't get me wrong. But no, I mean, it is good, because one of the things that it definitely shows is you're getting fans who are part of this universe now. People who are really invested in the characters and who actually care about bringing and doing justice to these characters and bringing them to life. And I really like when you pointed out the fact that you now are getting this whole crazy cross-platform thing where you got animated characters coming into live action, you have live action characters coming into animation, which really isn't super unusual, because a lot of times, when you got Anakin and Obi Wan and all that, of course they were introduced to us in a live action format, but right. Fennec Shand is a relatively new character, and to actually put her prominently in this new series, I think actually says a lot. So I too am looking more forward now to Bad Batch. I think more so than even I originally was.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, once again, anytime we get to some more good Star Wars stories, and once again, I think this is the creation of Filoni and Favreau, and so of course, it's definitely going to be interesting, because Bad Batch is kind of Filoni's baby, so
yeah.
So I think it's going to be cool, definitely.
I think so. All right, so from there, we're going from the Bad Batch series, right? So we were in animation. Now we're going back to live action. And so now we have somebody new who is announced for the Obi Wan series, Indira Varma. And I'm trying to remember, this is me not doing my homework, basically. I'm trying to remember what she's from.
Game of Thrones.
Yes.
Yep.
Who did she play, though?
That name escapes me, but I remember she played like this queen that was kind of next to this. I think it was Pedro Pascal, actually. who was actually in Game of Thrones. She played like.
It is kind of weird when you think about it.
Yeah,
like how many
I was just like,
characters have come from that show now.
Oh yeah, I just had to think about it. I was like, wait a minute. Yeah, it was Pedro Pascal. Yeah, his character. And she plays like this kind of warrior kind of queen, but I can't think of her name at the moment. But the cool thing is that she actually could be playing Asajj Ventress in the live action Obi-Wan.
Really, Asajj Ventress?
Yes,
that was who it was. Because that, you know what, I must have missed that part because I didn't see that. I mean, to see Asajj Ventress in a live action series has been kind of a dream of mine.
Me too. That's what I'm saying. Like
for a long time, and I mean, I could, looking at her picture, it's like now I'm trying to like see her without hair,
like bald.
Yeah, like bald, and maybe with a little tuft of the black hair or whatever.
Yeah.
I can see it.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think she definitely has the body type for her.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing is, though, man, she's going to have to, I hope she's like in some serious training.
Oh, yeah, she would definitely, because, Asajj was no joke with the sabers.
Well, maybe that's why Ewan McGregor had to become a buff Obi-Wan.
Right.
Because, I mean, you got somebody like Asajj Ventress coming after you, man. That's a thing.
Well, I mean, that would be cool because then you have a lot of these. But then, once again, well, maybe we'll find out in Obi-Wan, but like, okay, you bring in Asajj Ventress, well, where was she doing the original trilogy unless she dies in Obi-Wan?
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's kind of like you're almost giving it. But again, you know what?
But then again, why is Ahsoka? You know what I'm saying? Like,
I mean, but you have a lot of. But what I was going to say is you got a lot of that, though. When you stop and think about it, you get a lot of this in the prequels. Mm-hmm. I mean, Obi-Wan's going to be okay. I mean, no matter how many times, like, Dooku's shooting him with lightning and, I mean, I'm sure there's probably somebody that was watching those that didn't see the original trilogy that's like, oh, I wonder if Obi-Wan's going to make it. And everybody else is kind of like, yeah, okay, he'll be fine.
Yeah.
Or when Grievous goes up against him or any of this stuff.
Yeah.
Some of this stuff.
They're not any real danger because
right, because you know the outcome.
Right.
So if it's one of those situations where, hey, Asajj Ventress is in this, but she's not in this, okay. But again, I mean, we kind of assume that anyway. Not to mention the fact you could actually get away with not putting her in the original trilogy because if you remember, she was another one. She kind of walked away from that whole life.
Yeah.
So she was probably more smuggler-ish.
Or, just kind of, baby, kind of like somebody for hire, like almost like a mercenary for hire.
Yeah, exactly. Like a hired gun kind of thing.
Yep.
That would make sense.
Ronaldo says she was Elleria Sand in Game of Thrones. That's right.
Yeah, that doesn't help me.
I don't think you watched that show. But yeah, I'm really excited about that. I mean, like I said, if we get a live action Asajj Ventress, I mean, that would be cool. I mean, and that's what I'm saying, like, just seeing a lot of these characters that we kind of fell in love with on the animated front to now come to live action. Like we said, we've always wanted to see Ahsoka. We got Bo-Katan now. We've got possibly Hera Syndulla, and then now, and possibly Asajj Ventress.
What I would love to see, and I mean, anybody that's watched this show for more than like a day knows this, is if they did it could just be like a one-off, but they did like a little mini series from the book Dark Disciples.
Oh yeah,
that would just be I mean, if I ever got that, that will fulfill a long-standing wish for me, and that, of course,
make a wish.
Right. That's all I have to do. I mean, it's. Yeah, no, I won't joke about it.
Yeah, I was about to say, I was about to tell you, don't do it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna,
Gina Carano,
yeah.
Don't do it.
Exactly. You know what? I'm gonna leave that alone. But I will say this: that it has been a long-standing thing to where I would love to see. First of all, I would love to see a live-action Asajj Ventress. I have been wanting to see that for so long, as you know, But to see basically the Dark Disciples book, which involved her, involved Mace, it involved Quinlan Voss. Dooku was in it,
of course,
really really prominently. So I mean, there's just like so many different. It was an unproduced Clone Wars episode. I think it's actually supposed to be like a story arc though, like a 2 or 3 episode thing, like they usually do. But oh man, dude, that would have just been like the best thing ever to me. And I was really disappointed because I thought when they started to do season 7 of the Clone Wars, it's like, oh sweet, maybe we'll get that, because we did get some of them. Like I think the Bad Batch actually was part of that too. But see, the difference is that quasi season 6 that they made, that they released after it had been canceled and all that, there were some episodes that were finished or finished enough to release, and that's what we got as season 6. There were other episodes that were written and they kind of maybe had some animatronics and some test footage and stuff like that. But then there were other ones that were just paper. And then what ended up happening was they wrote the Dark Disciples book based on one of those episode story arcs or whatever. Right.
Ronaldo says, great casting. If she is Ventress, it would be a dream come true.
Yeah, that's actually something that I had. And it would be time, because I actually think that Ventress would be a really great addition
to Obi. And she's a big part of the Obi Wan story, too.
She is. It would actually make sense.
Yeah.
And if she were really the main antagonist, or, I mean, I don't really know, because she wasn't really a bad guy by the end of Clone Wars.
Oh, I just had a thought.
I thought you saw something. I was about to turn around. I'm like, it's like looking over there. I'm like,
no, but I'm just thinking, because, you know, Hayden Christensen is playing Vader. What if Asajj actually goes up against Vader?
Or it becomes like his acolyte or something.
Oh, yeah.
Ah.
That'd be sweet.
That'd be ultra cool. But I mean,
like maybe she's fine. Like Vader's like, you know what? Go find Obi Wan. That's what I'm talking about.
Would be hire her to do that.
That's what I'm saying.
Oh, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like that would be sweet.
That would be very cool.
Alrighty.
All right. Well, whatever, let us know though what you guys are thinking. Do you want to see her play Asajj Ventress, or who do you think that she's coming in as if it's not Asajj? Let us know in the comment section below, or you still have some time to chat with us live. But now we get to something that I've been wanting to talk about.
I bet you have.
Forever. So Rian Johnson has finally confirmed,
yes,
through some of the things that he has said.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he didn't really come and outright say it, because he was actually talking about one specific thing.
Right.
But that one specific thing demonstrates, beyond the shadow of the doubt, there was no plan when this thing came out. He talked about the fact that Ben Solo wasn't supposed to die in his version of it, that there were no plans for that to happen. He confirmed the fact that, everybody just got to sort of come into the project and do their own thing and then leave whatever for the next director. So again, finally, and this is the thing that has plagued the sequel trilogy. It is like the worst. I mean, I'll keep saying it until
I'm blue in the face.
I'm blue in the face. And look, my background's already way ahead of me. Is the fact that one of the things, the main thing, I'm going to say the primary thing that hurt the sequel trilogy was the fact that there was absolutely no plan. It was a choose-your-own-adventure kind of thing where a director can come in and go in their own direction, no pun intended, and then basically the next director can come in and then go in the own direction, where what they should have done was they should have done what they've been doing with the High Republic. They should have come in, brought the 3 directors in along with the story group, and say, hey, let's create a story arc. Here's a beginning, middle, and end of the overall trilogy. And then each director then takes a chunk of the story, and certainly they have room to put their own spin on it or to tell their own story within that. But it's kind of like, okay, when you get to the middle of your movie, it has to hit here. When you get to the end, it has to hit there. And then the next director picks it up.
Yeah. That editorial was brought to you by Recasts. Yeah, reading this, basically like you said, they didn't have any plan for Ben Solo or Kylo to die. And then I guess it was kind of further confirmed by like JJ too, that because what he was basically saying was like he was trying to leave room for JJ to kind of expand, but then like JJ was basically saying, well, he didn't leave me room to expand. I had to go this way. So you can even still like like there's still a whole lot of confusion going on with this particular project. And, that's one of the things. Now, granted, Star Wars has been one of those franchises that kind of, even the original trilogy was kind of made up as it went. However, once again, the difference is that you had one director, or you had one person writing the story, being George Lucas. Now you have in this situation, you have three different people, well, in this case, two different people writing the story. So now you had J.J. Abrams, who kicked it off with Force Awakens. Rian Johnson picked it up with The Last Jedi, and then that's the one that pretty much polarized, the whole Star Wars community. And then after that, JJ tried to salvage everything after that by coming back and trying to finish it off, and it didn't hit as well as people would have liked.
What a shock.
Yeah, exactly. And so, although we won't get the next movie until 2023, where we get Rogue Squadron, the films are kind of like you always said, that's where Star Wars really lives. That's where we kind of got introduced to it throughout all the saga films. Now, granted, we do starting to have live action shows like Mandalorian and Rangers of the New Republic and all the other different shows that would be forthcoming. It just shows that, once again, that Lucasfilm basically was just money hungry, and they were just like, okay, we have this franchise, let's hurry up and do something with it. And even, like I said, even Disney admitted that they rushed out new Star Wars content over the past handful of years. And
yeah,
I think
it's almost like, what spawned this big confession? I mean, besides the sequel trilogy being long done. I mean, they're certainly not going to do this in between like 8 and 9 or something, but it just amazes me that now they're coming out and just saying all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess in Rian Johnson's case, you can understand, because that poor guy's just been like, abused and everything, to where it's like, whatever. It's not like you guys could do anything to me that hasn't already been done. But I just find that it's odd now, and especially because one of the things that I had entertained the idea of maybe us covering, I don't remember who it was now, was somebody. They started acting like there's a Star Wars movie being produced by somebody else now. At first, we thought it was Patty Jenkins, who was doing
Rogue Squadron.
Yeah, Rogue Squadron, and that was kind of announced as the next movie, but then it's like, was it? Yeah.
Not Heatherland, right?
No.
That's the
well, that's another one. Yeah, that she's doing. Leslie
Headland.
Yeah,
but she's doing Acolyte though.
Yeah, she's doing Acolyte. No, this is Man, I texted it to you the other day. You know what?
You got Feige. You got.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna look it up. Well, you got Taika Waititi, who was supposed to do something too.
Right. Rian Johnson still has his trilogy that he still has. Still according to.
Yeah, it's like it says. Does a new film take place on Exegol? Just announced Star Wars movie taps slate director and MCU writer, J.D. Dillard. I didn't read the full article because I didn't think that we were going to be able to really cover it, and I'm not really trying to bring it in. Maybe we'll do it on next Friday's show or whatever, if it becomes something that we should really report. I mean, sometimes it's kind of like we'll plan to talk about these things, and then they get debunked like 3 days later. And even though it's not like we're really a straight-up news show, we're more like a Star Wars discussion show.
Mm-hmm.
So even if something's like totally out there and wild, it's still a lot of times worth discussing. But, this, I really want to find out a little bit more about this before I go into it. But what it does show is the fact that it's starting to seem like the movies are coming back on track again.
Mm-hmm.
At first it seemed like maybe the movies were going to be pushed back a little. And, of course, they are a little bit because of COVID.
Right.
But it looked like the movies were actually going to be pushed back because their focus seemed to be more the Disney Plus series. And I was even thinking, and this is a possibility, I think they even said that this new movie might be a Disney Plus movie, that it might not actually hit the theaters, but it might be the first Star Wars movie that goes direct to Disney Plus. And of course, the way things have been going with the pandemic and
right.
you know, you have HBO Max releasing all their films in 2021 direct to streaming first at the same time as they're in the theater, but still, it just seems like it could be a new direction for them. We'll have to see.
Yeah, Ronaldo says, what, they had no plan? Who would have believed it? He says sarcastically.
Well, certainly not I.
Then he says, at least it looks like they're correcting their mistakes.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I do. I mean, hey, listen, I'll be the first person to call people out when they're doing something stupid. I mean, there's definitely no Star Wars fanboy apologist in this room. I mean, we'll call Lucasfilm and the whole thing to task. We'll point out really stupid things in the films and all that stuff. We're fans, but
yeah,
it's not like so reverential and holy to us that, you know, we wouldn't touch it. Where some fans are like that. If you say anything bad about it, they'll be all over you. The flip side of that, though, is I will also talk about when they're doing something right.
Right.
And I think Ronaldo's correct. I think that this is definitely a situation where they've learned their lesson and now they're trying to actually do things the right way. It's a lesson I wish they had learned like 8 years ago. But
hey,
it's a lesson nonetheless, right?
Yeah, he says something curious. Mark Hamill said that Ryan does have a plan for his trilogy, the one that will never happen.
Yeah, you know, it's funny about that whole trilogy too, because he keeps thinking that it's going to. And I'm starting to think that there's definitely a chance that we're going to get a Rian Johnson trilogy for Star Wars.
I don't know, because they haven't stopped him from saying, you know what I'm saying? You think they would have stopped him if that was the case, so.
And especially if it was because of the whole fan thing or whatever, it just seems to me like they would have been like, yeah, no.
But because it's something completely different, I mean, hey.
I really, you know what? I would give anything to know what that is.
Definitely.
I don't care necessarily. I don't have to know I say that now, but at first I say, well, I just give me an idea of like what era it's in or what, you know, kind of like what's the overall arc or whatever. But then you give me that, I might be like, oh, well, hey, now I want to know everything. So yeah, I just think it's one of those things that this illustrates something that we've been talking about for a while. But the good news is, and this is one of the reasons why I think we wanted to talk about it on this show, is that you definitely have a situation where they've learned from their mistakes. They're moving on. We're getting a lot of exciting content. I just can't help but think that we're in a rebirth of Star Wars.
Mm-hmm. I think they've definitely learned their lesson. I think now with the success of The Mandalorian, I think they've realized this is how we do it. You know, to borrow Montel Jordan, but
right.
So, I just hope that they, you know, really just number one just plan, and then they just get the right people. And
well, I hope it continues.
Yeah,
you know, because it's one of those things that they are doing things right. The things that we're seeing that are coming out of Star Wars seem to be cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, there's going to be some things that we can always pick on.
Right.
You know, it's kind of funny because friend Doug,
mm-hmm.
he tunes in every once in a while. He brought up something the other day. He was kind of like, well, so Anakin built 3PO, right? I'm like, yeah. He's like, basically out of parts, like laying around the shop. Almost like a homemade DIY project.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, yeah, right. It's like, okay, so then why are there all these 3PO-looking droids and it's a protocol thing and all that? And I'm like, well, I mean, he kind of built that model, but, I mean, I get it. It's kind of like one of those things, the way they portray it in the films, and then later on. And that's because I think that was one of the ways where Lucas kind of made a dumb move, where he tried to make Anakin build 3PO.
Well, I mean, it doesn't, you know, it's kind of like no different than, you know, somebody building like a car or building
well,
like
I used that example. I said, like, if you built, but it wasn't implied, though, that he was like a protocol droid that would have been a model. It's not like, you know, you bought, say, an iMac
mm-hmm.
that was a branded iMac. See, using the computer example, it would be like, yes, if you bought a tower and you bought, all the components and stuff like that, you put it together. Okay, yeah, it's a PC, but it's a generic PC made up of a bunch of maybe name brand type parts.
Mm-hmm.
That's different than building an HP model, whatever it is. See, the problem is 3PO being the C-3PO protocol droid, and this is something that's even pushed in that comic where Lobot, remember last week how we talked about Lobot's fate?
Yeah.
There was an earlier model of the protocol droids, and then 3PO came out and you saw a bunch of them. So it's the way that it's shaped. If they had said, oh yeah, 3PO is building a protocol droid or something, I don't think anything would have thought anything of it. But, and then of course he went on to say, which I thought was hilarious too, like 6 million forms of communication. Is that it? Like, you're in a galaxy of billions of, shouldn't there be like more? 6 million seems like a really low number for that.
Well, once again, you still have to, because I think what the whole point of it all was that this kid was that talented. I think that's the thrust of it all, is that, you have a kid that's building a protocol droid from scratch. And so, yeah, maybe 6 million forms of communication isn't,
But that's the protocol droids. That's function. Like their thing.
But you got to think about it. He's building it from parts that aren't, like, it's not like he's in the factory. He has access to.
But see, that's the point. Is that if you look throughout the original trilogy, if you look through everything, there's a lot of exact 3PO looking droids. They're an actual model.
Right.
So that's the problem. It's sort of like if they had implied that, okay, yes, he's just building that model droid, but they weren't. It was almost like, oh, look, he's building this droid from scratch, blah, blah, blah. He doesn't know.
I don't know, man. I think I didn't get that. I guess maybe that's what it is. I don't get the fact that he, like it was like 3PO was like a one-of-a-kind thing. Like, I don't...
That's kind of how they imply it. If you go back and watch Phantom Menace again, that's kind of how it's implied.
Okay, I'll watch it just to hear the dialogue again.
And that's the thing. And it's one of those things where even when I was watching The Phantom Menace for the very beginning, I always thought it was really stupid that Lucas ended up trying to make it that Anakin builds 3PO. It's almost like that everybody's got to be somebody's father. Everybody has to be related to somebody. Or, it's like, why can't you just...
have it there?
Yeah, why do you have to tie everything in?
I get him building a pod racer or something like that.
Exactly, that makes perfect sense.
And they could have just left it at that. And
they could have. And then, the fact that he can fix anything and all this other stuff.
And,
Sure, or if, like, maybe if they were saying in 3PO's case, like, okay, it was a protocol droid, but it was like beyond repair, but he was able to fix it kind of thing. They could have, but Yeah, and again, if Lucas were here, well, that would be cool. But if we got him in and he heard this conversation, he would probably say something to the effect of, guys, it's kind of an overarching, it's not sci-fi. You're not supposed to analyze it to this degree.
Right.
But I'm just bringing this up because it just shows that there are things in Star Wars, there are inconsistencies, and they're done even by George Lucas himself.
True.
So when you have other people that are, involved in it too, it gets to be convoluted. But hopefully Star Wars is on the right track. That's what I really hope.
Right. Absolutely.
All right. So is it time?
It's time, my friend.
All right. Yes. After my little rant, we got to do it. It's time to clear your mind. All right. So this is the point where you guys send us questions. We pick 2 of them every week to answer on our show. And so who's our first person that gets their question answered on our show? Like it's this big honor. Talking like we got like millions of viewers, right?
And the award goes, no.
Yeah, right.
So our first question comes from Charles Wood. If they bring back Ezra and Hera to the small screen, do you think we will see them on the big screen?
I'm not entirely sure about that, only because I think that it seems like they're trying to keep that separate now.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to see them on the big screen.
At least not right away.
Unless they decide to do a, let's just say, for example, Rangers of the New Republic kind of takes off and it's a really big hit like Mandalorian or something like that. I could see them maybe doing a film where they focus on what happened after Rebels. So you can do that, like, okay, Ezra goes off with Thrawn and you want to cover that possibly. And then you can still show what Sabine and Ahsoka and all those characters are doing, because remember, they were trying to go find Ezra and trying to, search for him. So you can cover that in the film somewhat. And you can kind of have those stories kind of taking place at separate, locations. And then that's why you have the reuniting of them possibly in Rangers of the New Republic.
Yeah,
it's possible, but
right, and I agree. So, yeah. No, I don't think so either. I mean, I think that because you're right, they could do it in Rangers of the New Republic or a Mandalorian movie or an Ahsoka movie, but it almost looks like they're trying to keep this part of the universe firmly on television. And the movies seem to be taking on a different type of a thing. I mean, we've got the Rogue Squadron. Now they could coexist. Maybe they have things that are taking place during the same time period, but, it becomes bigger. My honest opinion is that we're going to see a High Republic film before we would see any of that other stuff.
True.
I definitely think that there's a much greater chance for something to take place in the High Republic than there is them start to go after some of these. But again, you can't ignore the almighty buck. I mean, if it becomes popular enough, who knows? Who's next?
And it's funny that you bring that up, because next we have Mario Denard, and his question is, do you think Taika Waititi will direct the first High Republic film? I've actually thought about that, honestly, because I see, especially reading the comics, the type of humor seems right up there with him. Those type of characters, I could see that being a Taika thing. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, definitely when you see Thor Ragnarok in particular, you see some of the other stuff that he's done. It's definitely more of a Taika Waititi feel.
Yeah.
And I do think that is an interesting thing that I haven't really thought about, is because we're always focused on him doing a movie. I would almost say that he's as perfect to do the High Republic as Benioff and Weiss were to do the Old Republic.
Yeah.
I definitely think that that's just like a really good fit. And I definitely think that with the High Republic picking up steam, we had the second novel that was just released. The third comic is out, which, by the way, we're reviewing Monday. There's just all kinds of things that they could do with it. And I think that there's this whole new characters that are coming out. I mean, they just released two. I can't remember what they were called, but the High Republic has like some new dark side using enemy now. Begins with a D. I'm sure Ronaldo's going to text it in any minute now. And they may have been mentioned in the books. I have a feeling when they come out with these articles like, oh, look, a new villain, it's kind of like, yeah, it's probably in Claudia Gray's book, and now they're trying to put it out there to get people excited.
All right.
I'm also wondering, and this would be a telltale sign too, if you start getting merchandise from the High Republic, like you start getting action figures and stuff like that, I think that there's a greater chance of doing it. Yeah. By the way, in a relation to the early story, better get your Cara Dune merchandise while it's still around, because I think that, who's making it now, Kenner or Hasbro? One of them.
I think it's Hasbro.
Yeah, and I think that they said that they're going to cease production on the Cara Dune figures now. It's like, man, she can't even have her toy. It's like, what if kids still want to have little Cara Dune adventures?
Right. No Cara Dune costumes for Halloween.
I guess not, man. I mean, I guess we
grab that Fennec Shand outfit instead.
Yeah, right? Yeah, it's kind of like, or Hera. Yep. Hera replaces Cara for Halloween.
Right.
I mean, it just, I don't know.
Ronaldo says, in response to the question, I think he will. The style works for Taika. So, Yeah, I could see. Yeah, definitely. Like the type of humor, I could see this. The style, like he said, the style of the comic. It seems like it's right up there with his thing. And like I said, the fact that he's working on a film, it's like, well, why would you work on a film that there's no
like a foundation,
or there's no context for? You know what I'm saying? You just throw. I mean, granted, we did get The Force Awakens, but we saw how that happened. You know what I'm saying? You see how that ended up. Whereas I think now, where you have all this merchandise, why would you have the High Republic out here and then you not kind of go with that?
That's something that's interesting too. That Disney could have put out a bunch of crap. I mean, they did, but I don't think that they marketed it strong enough to where you have a series of comics books and what have you. Maybe even some animated shorts. Because remember that weird Clone Wars? It was like 2 minutes or something in each episode. Right. If they had done something like that, if they had basically said, you know what, we're going to put out like these little shorts or something that are going to essentially whet your appetite for The Force Awakens and put it into some sort of context, I think that would have been way more effective than if they had just dropped this thing on us, right. Even though everybody had been waiting for it. So, I mean, in a way, I guess, and that's part of the reason why they repeated all the story beats from 4. It was like, yeah, you guys remember this. Come on, work with me here.
Exactly.
So, I mean, the fact that they could do this, though, because they're going to have books, they're going to have comics at the very least, they can then do a High Republic movie, and I think it would be fine. But in a way, I almost wonder if it would work better as a series. You know, because there's a lot there.
I mean, yeah, but I think this will be a great way to reboot the films because now you can take it to a completely different place, and you already have source material.
But Taika's not the first one.
Well, I mean, you got Patty Jenkins doing Rogue Squadron, but I mean, I'm talking about like a
kind of like something we're not familiar with,
like a saga thing. That's what I'm saying. Like,
yeah. Well, there's
like the High Republic would be more like a saga type.
There's even been rumors that they're gonna do an episode 10.
Yeah.
I mean, I know Daisy Ridley was talking about in, things like, oh, yeah, I'm for returning. She's like, like not right now, but
yeah,
she'd be up for doing whatever, which really surprises me because honestly, I thought she would be the least likely to return.
Yeah. Well, John Boyega probably the least. Then Daisy. But, yeah, so I guess we'll see, man. But,
yeah, that's...
Ronaldo said, is that new enemy the Drengir?
Yes. That's it. That is it.
Yeah.
I mean, what's a comment? There we go. Yeah, that's it. Did they come from the books? Like I'm talking to him like he's a guest on the show. Like he's going to answer me like, yeah.
Actually, he probably will.
Well, he will. He'll chat it.
I mean, yeah.
In 20 seconds once the delay, for streaming hits. But yeah. But I mean, it's almost like I'm talking to him like we're interviewing him or something.
But yeah, I think, like I said, I could definitely see the High Republic being a Taika thing. And
I hope so.
And I would really interested to see that.
I mean, what else could he be? Well, I can't really say that because who knows what he would do. But that, yes, that fits. And look, if we're thinking about this, somebody, I'd like to think that the people that are actually doing this professionally know more about this than I do.
Right.
So I would think that if it occurs to me, it should occur to them.
I got to get a job at Lucasfilm.
I wouldn't turn it down.
I don't care if I'm like the stock boy. Like at least I'm around this stuff.
But what would be funny though? I mean, what would be hilarious is I'm sure like, you think it's his dream job, you get it, and you're like, ugh.
I hate it. I want to go back to school.
Dude, this sucks. I hate Lucasfilm. It's like Star Wars. I don't even want to do this anymore. Star Wars is...
I want to do the podcast.
Yeah, just exactly. You know what I want to do? I want to do an I Hate Lucasfilm show.
It really grinds my gears.
Yeah, it's like, you know what happened at work today? I can't tell you.
Right.
It's like NDA, buddy.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I think that, overall, I think that Star Wars is actually going in a really good direction. And I like it because, let's face it, for us, this is great. I mean, we have so much that we can discuss now. I remember when we started the show, The Last Jedi, I think, was just coming out. And there were things that we can talk about because you and I could talk about anything.
True.
So the cool thing about it is that we could have really gotten into a lot of characters. And I think that was really the original tone of the show. It was like, yeah, let's get into deep into, let's analyze certain scenes and all that stuff. But then something weird happened. It was like this whole big explosion of Star Wars stuff started coming out. And even though we keep yammering on that we're not a Star Wars news show, we almost have to discuss all the latest Star Wars stuff because it just kind of comes at you.
Yeah, and it definitely changes the course and the direction of the whole franchise.
Exactly. So, I mean, we'd be really doing people a disservice if we didn't actually talk about it. It's just that rather than us like giving the news, it's more like, hey, here's what's happening out there today. Let's all talk about it as a group. But that's what's great. So, this is a great time to be a Star Wars fan. So definitely leave a comment in the comment section about any of the stuff that we talked about today. Or if you guys have ideas for a show that you would like to see us do, any kind of a topic, let us know. Basically, hit us up at Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, @HeadToHeadSW, and let us know what you guys are thinking, what you'd like to see. And certainly, make sure you hit that subscribe button if you guys like what you see and you want to be a part of our community, because we'd certainly love to have you. Hit the like button if you like this video.
Yep.
Because that is really what's going to help us grow. It's going to help us bring more content to you. And let's face it, it makes everything a lot better for us.
Yeah.
Which makes things better for you. All right, so join us Monday at 8 o'clock, where we're going to be reviewing the 3rd issue of the High Republic. If you guys have missed our reviews of the High Republic issue 1 and 2, you can check it out on our channel, and you'll be all caught up for Monday at 8 o'clock. And then, of course, next Friday at 8.
We'll be right back here.
Yeah, we'll be right back here. So with that, I'm Eric Vansel.
And I'm Daryl Sanders.
May the Force be with you.
Always.
Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter @HeadToHeadSW. Submit your questions for our next show. Visit our official website at headtoheadswpodcast.com. Until next time, may the Force be with you, always.